He had grown used to the hardness of the concrete, the bitter wind that clawed through the alleys, the gnawing hunger that kept him awake long after the city lights had dimmed. But nothing ever made the cold easier, and each night when he wrapped himself in his worn blanket, he felt the fragile line between survival and surrender. Years had passed since he last had a home, a bed, or a table with food set before him, and though people passed him daily, their eyes hurried past as if he were invisible, as if he were not flesh and blood, but a shadow lingering too long. He remembered once being a boy who dreamed of adventures, of family, of belonging, yet now he was reduced to waiting out the nights, guarding the single thread of warmth he had left. He learned not to beg loudly, not to cry out, but simply to endure, and in that endurance he found a strange kind of dignity. His blanket was his most precious possession, more valuable than coins dropped in a cup, more necessary than scraps of bread. For in the cruel cold of winter nights, it was the thin shield that kept his body from freezing. He guarded it carefully, folding it each morning, tucking it behind him as he searched for food. For losing it meant losing his last defense. Yet one night, as the wind howled through the streets and frost bit at every corner, he saw a figure huddled under a bridge not far from where he usually lay. It was another man, younger perhaps, shivering violently, his arms wrapped around himself but offering no defense against the icy air, his lips trembling with each desperate breath. The sight pulled at him in a way he could not resist. Hunger had carved sharp lines into his own body. Loneliness had hollowed his heart. But seeing another soul suffer in the same cruel night brought back a memory of his own brother, lost to time and distance, and the thought pierced him. What if that were someone he loved? The homeless man watched him for a long time, torn between his own need and the sight of someone suffering even more. He looked at his own blanket, thin though it was, and then back at the stranger. Something stirred within him, something he could not explain, a quiet whisper that said he should give even the little he had. He fought it at first, clutching the blanket tighter, telling himself he would not survive the night without it. But the whisper grew stronger until it felt like a hand pressing gently against his heart. Slowly he rose, carrying the blanket with him, and walked toward the man. The stranger looked up in confusion, his eyes wide with both fear and longing. Without a word, the homeless man placed the blanket over him, tucking it gently around his shoulders, and said softly, "You need it more than I do." For a moment, the younger man simply stared, his face etched with disbelief. Then tears filled his eyes as he clutched the blanket tight. The homeless man gave a faint smile and walked back to his corner with nothing but the thin jacket on his back. Night was crueler than ever, the cold seeping into his bones, each gust of wind cutting like a knife. And yet as he lay on the bare ground, there was a warmth inside his chest that no frost could steal, the warmth of knowing he had chosen compassion over fear. His body shook uncontrollably, his teeth clattering, his fingers stiff, and he knew he might not make it until morning. Yet in those trembling hours he whispered quiet prayers he barely remembered from his childhood, prayers his mother had taught him, prayers that someone would see him, that God would remember him. He thought of the Psalms, words once spoken in Sunday services when he was a child, words about the Lord being a refuge and a shepherd. His voice cracked as he whispered them into the wind, and though his body ached, there was a strange peace, as though unseen arms had wrapped around him. When dawn broke, pale light spilling across the city, he opened his eyes expecting only another day of hunger and weariness. But what he saw made him sit up in stunned silence. Beside him lay a small bundle wrapped carefully, a loaf of bread still warm from an oven, a folded set of clothes not new but clean and sturdy, and resting gently on top was a Bible, its cover worn yet full of life. He reached out with trembling hands, touching the bread first, smelling its freshness, then unfolding the clothes to see a shirt, trousers, and a coat that would shield him far better than his old rags. Finally his fingers brushed against the Bible, and as he picked it up, memories of his mother's voice reading to him long ago returned. Verses about mercy, about a shepherd who never abandons his sheep, Tears welled in his eyes, falling freely onto the pages as he opened it and read the first words his eyes found. Words that spoke of love, of hope, of being seen. He looked around, but the street was empty. No one in sight, no trace of who had placed the gifts beside him. He held the Bible close to his chest, whispering thank you, his voice breaking under the weight of gratitude. For the first time in years, he did not feel invisible. For the first time in years, he believed he was not forgotten. The food filled his stomach, the clothes warmed his body, but it was the word that nourished his soul, reminding him that even in the darkest alleys, even on the coldest nights, God's presence could reach him. He returned to the spot under the bridge where he had given his blanket, but the younger man was gone. Only a faint indentation in the dirt remained, as if to mark that the act of kindness had truly happened, that two broken men had met in the night and one had given what little he had. And heaven had answered. Day after day, he kept the Bible close, reading whenever he could, drawing strength from passages that told of those who had nothing yet found everything in God's love. He read of widows who gave their last coins, of prophets who wandered the wilderness, of a Savior who had nowhere to lay his head. And in those stories he found his own reflection. His life did not suddenly change into riches or comfort, but inside he was no longer the same. The gnawing despair that once consumed him was replaced by a quiet flame of hope, and though he still walked the streets, he walked them with a sense that he was not alone. People began to notice something different in his eyes, a gentleness, a peace, and a few even stopped to listen when he spoke of what had happened, how he gave away his only blanket and received far more than he imagined in return. Some dismissed it as chance, others as coincidence, but he knew deep in his heart that it was grace, the kind that cannot be bought or explained, only received with open hands. On cold nights he still shivered, but as he clutched the Bible to his chest he felt warmed in ways no blanket ever gave. And when others on the street asked him why he smiled, why he carried himself as if a hidden treasure was inside him, he would tell them his story, not to boast but to share the hope he had found. Years later, when asked why he still carried that old Bible, though its pages were worn and fragile, he would smile and say, "Because it was given to me when I had nothing, and in it I found everything." His story spread quietly, passed from one person to another, until it reached beyond the alleys and streets, a testimony of how a single act of generosity opened the door for heaven to answer. And now, as you listen to his story told through these words, perhaps you feel the stirring of something greater, the reminder that even the smallest act of kindness can open the door for miracles, that even when you have little, your gift may become the answer to someone's desperate prayer. The homeless man who gave away his blanket teaches us that generosity is not measured by abundance, but by love, and that in giving we may receive what our souls most hunger for. If this story has touched your heart, I invite you to share it so others may be inspired, to leave a comment with your thoughts or your own testimony of faith, and to subscribe to Faith Light Stories so you never miss a reminder that even in the coldest nights, God still sends His light.